Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, I still have a cold, I apologize, but we are looking back at the Biographical Encyclopedia, Volume 1, again, because today we are talking about William Smith. This article is entitled Smith, William. William Smith was the younger brother of Joseph Smith. So I think he was probably best known for that. Also that he was one of the Quorum of the 12, and he was also called as presiding patriarch. And I believe that it was when he was called as presiding patriarch, it was right after the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. So, because before that, Hiram Smith was the patriarch. And so I believe they asked him, because he was in the same family, and by the way, there weren't that many brothers left. Like, if you think of all of Joseph Smith's brothers, most of them predeceased him or died with him. William Smith was one of the few exceptions to that. So there was Alvin, which we know, Hiram died with him, Joseph, and then Samuel, William, I'm trying to think of Don Carlos. I think he had, 5 brothers. And Don Carlos also died before him, if I'm not mistaken, or it was right around the same time. And William Smith, one of the few that outlived, like, the rest of the family. So that was part of the reason they asked him to be presiding patriarch, and it turned out that they had worded it incorrectly when they called him. They called him to be patriarch over the church instead of patriarch of the church, and therefore he had this idea that he was now in charge. He's like, oh, well then it's my job to, be in charge of the church. And like, no, we did not call you to be president of the church. We called you to be presiding patriarch. Yeah, and he got kind of mad about that, and he was like, no, I'm supposed to lead it. Nah. And yeah, he was excommunicated for that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he went over to what is now called the Community of Christ, which is the reorganized church, which was run at the time by Emma and Joseph Smith III. So if I'm not mistaken, he went to hang out with his nephew, Joseph Smith III, in that church, if I'm not mistaken. We'll double check that, but and I believe he also lived a very long life, so he was the only son of that family who lived really a decent length of life. Everybody else died in like their 30s and early 40s, and he lived to like 70. So so William Smith, and sometimes he listed as William B. Smith, and I'm not sure why. I don't think he had a middle name. Maybe it's one of the Luke S. Johnson kind of a situations where it's actually Luke Johnson, but we'll double check that and see if we can find out why he's sometimes listed as B with his middle name. I don't know what it should stand for, but yeah, William. So let's take a look at this article and see how much of that they mention. So, Smith, William, a member of the Council of 12 Apostles from 1835 to 1845, was the 5th son of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack. Born in Royalton, Windsor County, Vermont, March 13, 1811. He was baptized at an early period and was a teacher in the church in 1831. He took a mission to Erie County, Pennsylvania in December 1832 to preach the gospel and call the elders to Kirtland and attend a school of the prophets. Oh, they didn't say when he was born. Okay, I was trying to figure out how old he was, and then I'm like, oh, it doesn't actually say. Hopefully that will be rectified. He was ordained to the office of a high priest under the hands of Sidney Rigdon in council on the 21st day of June, 1833. During the winter of 1833, he worked on a farm and chopped cordwood near Kirtland. He was married to Caroline Grant, daughter of Joshua and Talia Grant, February 14th, 1833, by whom he had 2 daughters, Mary Jane and Caroline L. Okay. He went to Missouri and Zion's Camp in 1834 and returned to Kirtland the same fall. He was appointed one of the 12 apostles at the organization of that quorum at Kirtland February 15th, 1835, under the hands of Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris. Once again, I've said this a million times, and I will keep saying it. The first 12 apostles were called by the 3 witnesses. The reason for that was that Joseph Smith didn't want anyone to feel like he was biased in who he was calling, so he delegated that job to the 3 witnesses, and this was the result. Anyway, he accompanied the 12 on their first mission through the eastern states and returned with them to Kirtland in the fall. While Joseph Smith was presiding in a high council, William rebelled against him in a very headstrong manner. Interesting. So that was way back when. So that was during the, right after he was called. At a debating school held in the house of Father Joseph Smith, December 16, 1835, the prophet Joseph told the brethren he feared it would not result in good, whereupon William, in a rage, commanded Joseph to leave the house. What? Attempted to put him out, and inflicted upon him personal injury, the effects of which he occasionally felt until his death. What did he do? Did he break his arm or something? Holy cow! Oh my gosh, he literally, attacked him. Okay, that's kind of unforgivable, because honestly, who does that? And besides the fact that he's the younger brother, why did he think that he had the right to tell Joseph what to do? Besides the fact that Joseph was the head of the church. So, of course, he's allowed to just make these decisions for the church. It's really weird to me that he thought that he had enough authority to tell Joseph what to do. Wow. After Hiram and the 12 had labored with William for several days, he made confession and was forgiven. Interesting. So he had to have Big Brother come out, because I believe Hiram was stockier than Joseph, and he was like, I can, take you, don't even start with me. Ugh, that's awful. That's awful. This is really, really bad. You don't want somebody like that in a quorum of the 12, where you're supposed to be working in harmony with everyone else. Gosh, and he was still there for 10 years, so it's crazy. He removed to far west with his family in the spring of 1838. After Joseph was taken prisoner and the mob began to drive out the saints, William expressed himself in such a vindictive manner against Joseph that the church suspended him from fellowship. May 4th, 1839, at a general conference near Quincy. Gosh. He went to Illinois and settled in Plymouth, Hancock County, keeping a tavern. William was restored to the fellowship of the church. Keeping a tavern? Through the intercession of Joseph and Hiram, but when the 12 went to England, instead of accompanying them, according to the commandment of the Lord, he remained on his farm at Plymouth. Wow, he's just very rebellious, yeah? It doesn't sound like he's a kind of person who's interested in getting along with the people. He published a letter in the Times and Seasons, December 1st, 1840, making an apology for neglecting to go on his mission upon the ground of poverty, of course, but it came with an ill grace, and he was better situated to leave his family than any of the members of the quorum who went. Yeah. They were all poor. Come on. They were willing to do it, and they did it because they were willing to do it, and they raised money along the way. That's how they did it. Yeah, that's not an excuse. That's so frustrating. In the spring of 1841, he visited the branches of the church in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and collected means for his own benefit. Of course he did, returning to Nauvoo the same season. I am sure that wasn't the purpose of his mission. He was elected a member of the House of Representatives of the legislature of Illinois. Gosh, what a dumb idea. Don't do that. In the legislature of Illinois in the winter session of 1842 to 43. His acts as a member of the legislature were highly approved by the people. Okay. Surprisingly, he displayed considerable energy in defending the Nauvoo Charter and the rights of his constituents. Okay. Well, at least he took that seriously. Well, dude, if he's good at politics, he should stick to that, He took a journey to the east on business in the spring of 1843 and spent his time among the churches. William returned to Nauvoo April 22, 1844, with about 40 or 50 saints from New Jersey. After staying a short time in Nauvoo, he had his last interview with his brother Joseph under the following circumstances. He asked Joseph to give him a city lot near the temple. Joseph told him that he would do so with great pleasure if he would build a house and live upon it. But he would not give him a lot to sell. Oh gosh. William replied he wanted it to build and live upon. The lot was well worth $1,000. In a few hours afterwards, an application was made by Mr. Ivins to the recorder to know if that lot was clear and belonged to William Smith, for William had sold it to him for $500. Joseph, hearing of this, directed the clerk not to make a transfer, at which William was so offended that he threatened Joseph, who deemed it prudent to keep out of his way until William left on a steamboat for the East, accompanied by his family. This is so stupid. He spent his time mostly in the various branches of the church and collected a good deal of money for the temple, which he used for his own accommodation. Gosh, embezzlement as well. Like, this is not a good person. In all his missions, the course of conduct he pursued towards the females subjected him to much criticism. Ew! Oh my gosh! I had no idea! So he was creepy too? The thing is, like, when you're a missionary, like, people are already believing you and what you are saying. So you have a certain amount of power over their belief system. And if you are being super creepy toward women, then the women are going to think, oh, this is just how things are in this church. Like it's a vulnerable position to be in. You don't do this, ever. Ew, that's so gross. In a general conference of the church held in Nauvoo, October 6th, 1845, William Smith was dropped as one of the 12 apostles and patriarch of the church, and on the following Sunday, October 12th, he was excommunicated, as more of his inconsistent acts had come to light. I'm surprised it wasn't earlier. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like Joseph Smith was kind to him because he was his brother, and that's why I kept him on for so long. But after Joseph Smith was gone and someone else, Brigham Young was making the decisions, along with the rest of the quorum, he was like, yeah, we can't work with William. Get rid of him. Gosh. Sometime after, he associated himself with the apostate James J. Strang, who tried to organize a church of his own but failed. William Smith afterwards identified himself with the reorganized church, of which his nephew is president, and lived for a number of years in El Kedar, Clayton County, Iowa. He died November 13th, 1894, at Osterdock, Clayton County, Iowa, as the last surviving brother of Joseph the Prophet. See also Millennial Star, Volume 27, page 7. Gosh. The thing is, last surviving brother of Joseph Smith doesn't make him a good person. I mean, that is really obvious. I feel like there's not a whole lot of positive that he did in his life. Like, maybe preaching the gospel, but it sounds like that was only half-hearted in order to get money for himself or to, seduce the women. Like, oh, that's so gross. That's so disgusting. Ew. Ugh. So let's look at the Wikipedia article, see if they have anything to add or remove, just fact-checking in general. Gosh, that's so terrible. All right, William Smith, also found as William B. Smith, March 31st, 1811, that's when he was born, to November 13th, 1893. So he lived to 82. That's a long life for the 19th century, yeah? Was a leader in the Latter-day Saint movement and one of the original members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Smith was the 8th child of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack Smith, and was a younger brother of Joseph Smith Jr., the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement. After the 1844 murders of Joseph and Hiram Smith, William Smith claimed leadership of the Latter-day Saints and attracted a small number of followers. That's why he was excommunicated, right? Most church members accepted Brigham Young as rightful leader of the church, and Smith was later affiliated with the Strangite and reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, now the Community of Christ. That's so gross. Okay, early life. Born in Royalton, Vermont, Smith and his family suffered considerable financial problems and moved several times in the New England area. He was living in the home of his parents near Manchester, New York, when his brother Joseph reported that he had taken golden plates from the hill Cumorah. William was told by Joseph that he could not view the golden plates, but was allowed to reach into the case and feel what Joseph said were the plates. William was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on June 9th, 1830, by John Whitmer, one of the 3 witnesses to the Book of Mormon. I'm kind of annoyed because I share a baptism date with him. June 9th is my baptism date, so, June 9th is a great date. It's just happened. It's coincidence. I don't like it, though. Church leadership. On February 14th, 1835, the three witnesses designated Phineas Young, brother of Brigham, as one of the inaugural members of the Quorum of the 12. However, Joseph Smith insisted that his own younger brother William be selected instead. Phineas Young, oh my gosh, really? I didn't know that. Did you know that? Oh my gosh, because we've been talking the whole time about the three witnesses being the people who chose the first Quorum of the 12 because Joseph Smith didn't want anyone to think he was biased. And apparently he was, because it would have been Phineas Young? Interesting. He never became a member of the Quorum of 12. That's interesting. I had no idea. Now I want to learn more about Phineas Young, but that's really surprising to me. He spoke at conference a couple times. Oh, wow. Okay. Joseph Smith insisted that his own younger brother William be selected instead. Well, he was his only younger... Well, no, not the only. I guess at the time he did have a Don Carlos, but I believe he was much younger. Interesting. Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer later reported that William's selection was contrary to our feelings and judgment and to our deep mortification ever since. William Smith was ordained an apostle on February 15th. Yeah, it sounds to me like Joseph Smith was the one who kept him in the 12, like the whole time. That's why he was there for 10 years. I don't think he would have been under any other leadership. Ugh. Joseph Smith, I think, was a good person in a lot of ways, but there were some certain points where it just wasn't a talent of his, and he tended to be biased towards his friends. And that's part of the reason why so many people apostatized, because they weren't necessarily the best choice for this position. It was just that he liked them the most. So, William Smith being one of those is not a huge surprise, but at the same time, that's not the way things should go down, you know? On May 4th, 1839, Smith and Orson Hyde were suspended from the Quorum of the 12 by a vote of the church. Yeah, we talked about Orson Hyde, who had, gone away with Thomas B. Marsh, basically. He had signed an affidavit and stuff, yeah. And he stopped coming to, doing anything for the church for, a year. But that was around the same time then. However, Smith was readmitted to the quorum on May 25th, so less than a month later. That's ridiculous. From April to December 1842, Smith was the editor of The Wasp, a secular but pro-Mormon newspaper in Nauvoo, Illinois. Okay? Smith was fierce in his editorial criticism of the anti-Mormon newspaper The Warsaw Signal and its editor, Thomas C. Sharp, whom Smith referred to in The Wasp as Thomas C. Sharp. Very clever. Ugh. Smith resigned as the editor of The Wasp after he was elected to the Illinois General Assembly, and he was succeeded by fellow apostle John Taylor, who edited The Wasp for another 5 months before replacing it with a Nauvoo neighbor. Okay. On May 24th, 1845, Smith succeeded his late brother Hiram Smith as the presiding patriarch of the church. Shortly after his ordination to this position, Brigham Young printed a clarification in a newspaper that stated that Smith had not been ordained as patriarch over the church, but rather as patriarch to the church. See? I told you it was that. Smith regarded this clarification as a slight, and it exacerbated the growing tension between Smith and Young. Smith was patriarch to the church until October 6, 1845, when his name and positions were read at General Conference. But fellow apostle Parley P. Pratt expressed objections due to his character and practices. The conference attenders unanimously voted against Smith being retained as both an apostle and the patriarch, and he lost both offices, and was disfellowshipped from the church. Smith responded by submitting a lengthy statement to Sharp's Warsaw Signal, in which he compared Young to Pontius Pilate and Nero, and accused Young and other members of the 12 of secretly keeping multiple spiritual wives. Oh, he outed them. Oh, gosh. Okay, so him writing to the Warsaw Signal is weird because that was his rival, and he used to make fun of the guy who was running it, you know? A really terrible making fun of, a 12-year-old would do, but, hey, he was still making fun of him. But, outing them, spiritual wives, is not at all the term that they used. That's actually the term John C. Bennett used, which makes me wonder why he used that term. They were plural wives, yeah? They were people that they married And at the time, polygamy was not illegal. I want to emphasize that. Polygamy in the United States was not illegal until I think it was 1860 something. Or maybe anyways, it was around there. And so, like, you can't accuse people of things that are illegal if they weren't actually illegal at the time. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it accused Young and other members of the 12 of secretly keeping multiple spiritual wives. It was secret because people were afraid of it and they didn't want to be involved in it. So I understand why it was kept a secret, but, like, at the same time, you don't out people like that, you know? Like, it was kept secret for a reason, and it was their business at the end of the day. As a result of Smith's statement, Smith was excommunicated from the church by Young and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles on grounds of apostasy on October 19th, 1845, and that was absolutely justified. Relationship with Joseph Smith. The relationship, okay, we just heard from the other article it wasn't great, yeah? He beat up on his brother a lot. The relationship between Smith and his older brother Joseph was at times quite rocky. William is believed to have physically fought with or attempted to fight with Joseph on more than one occasion. In October 1835, a fist fight between the two was narrowly averted. Weeks later in December, there was an altercation between the two at a debating school being held in their father's home. And it is said at the time Joseph died, he was still suffering the physical effects of the beating that he received. Yeah, I wonder what exactly happened. He must have broken a bone if he was still dealing with the aftermath afterwards, yeah? Like, I can't imagine anything else that, like, would cause him pain long into the future. Unless it was really badly scarred or something. Like, if there's some bad scarring somewhere. I don't know. Later involvement with Latter-day Saint groups. As a result of Smith's excommunication, he did not follow Young and the majority of the Latter-day Saints who settled in Utah Territory. Rather, Smith followed the leadership of James J. Strang and was involved with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Strangite. In 1847, Smith announced that he was the new president of the Latter-day Saint Church and that he held a right to leadership due to the doctrine of lineal succession. What? He excommunicated Young and the leadership of the LDS Church, of course he did, and announced that the Latter-day Saints, who were not in apostasy by following Young, should gather in Lee County, Illinois. Okay, so he kind of tried to come up with his own, like, little group of people. In 1849, Smith gained the support of Lyman White, who led a small group of Latter-day Saints in Texas. Yeah, that didn't go well either. However, Smith's church did not last, and within a few years it dissolved. Shocking. Smith's relationship with Young remained strained, until Young's death in 1877. Smith believed that Young had arranged for William's older brother Samuel to be poisoned in 1844 to prevent his accession to the presidency of the church. I don't think that he was in line for and did anybody ever ask him to be president of the church? I don't know. It makes me, Samuel Smith was not an apostle, and therefore he's not on our list of people to talk about. But I'm wondering if maybe we should talk about some of these people, like Phineas Young and Samuel Smith. Maybe we will at some point. But that's interesting. Like, where do you come up with this stuff? It's so weird. Was he poisoned? I'm just gonna click over to his page really quick just to see how he died. Okay. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Samuel was attacked by mobbers while traveling toward Carthage after hearing rumors of trouble, and is said to have developed some kind of stitch in his side evading them, which may have contributed to his subsequent death. After evading the mobbers, he traveled to the jail, said to have been the first Latter-day Saint after the mobbers left, and retrieved his brother's bodies. Okay. Some church members assumed that Samuel would succeed Joseph as the president of the church. However, Samuel fell ill shortly after their deaths and died just 1 month later. Smith's official cause of death was bilious fever, which was an archaic and inexact term for any disease accompanied by a fever and the evacuation of bile, such as typhoid fever or malaria. Lucy Mack Smith later suggested that Smith had become ill because of the fatigue and shock occasioned by his experience of the death of his brothers. Well, I'm sure it didn't help, yeah. Smith's brother William later stated he had good reason to believe that Smith was poisoned by Hosea Stout on orders from Brigham Young and Willard Richards. Yeah, that's ridiculous. In a meeting on July 10th, in a meeting Smith had been in a meeting with Richards, which Smith reminded the group that he was Joseph's designee as president, and both Joseph and Hierophant died. No, he wasn't. Richards, however, had wanted to delay the decision on succession until Brigham Young and other prominent missionaries had returned to Nauvoo. Hosea Stout was suspected in part because, as reported by Smith's wife, Stout had been administering a white powder to Smith daily as treatment for his illness. Well, I have no idea what that was, but, I doubt that it was poison. Smith's mother does not appear to have considered him to have been murdered, and though his sole remaining brother, William Smith, later charged Richards and Stout with foul play, he did not bring forward his own evidence in support of that accusation until 1892. William Smith's charges were not pursued by legal authorities. Good. As it seems ridiculous to me. I had no idea that he thought that... I didn't know that Samuel Smith died that quickly after the martyrdom, but, also that... that William actually thought that his brother had been poisoned. Did he really think that, or was he just mad at them for excluding him? Huh. That's really weird to me. I don't know, that's weird to me. Alright. However, in 1860, Smith wrote a letter to Young stating that he desired to join the Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake Valley. Yeah. Forget you. Yeah. Shortly after sending this letter, Smith became involved as a soldier in the American Civil War, and after the war he did not show any interest in moving to Utah Territory. Okay, so he wrote the letter, didn't get an answer, and just started, joined up in the army, whatever. Sure, go ahead, fight in the Civil War, have fun. In 1878, Smith became a member of the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, our LDS Church, which was organized in 1860 with Smith's nephew, Joseph Smith III, as its leader. The majority of William Smith's followers also became members of the RLDS Church. I thought he didn't have any at the time. I guess maybe he did. While Smith believed that he was entitled to becoming the presiding patriarch or a member of the Council of the Twelves of the RLDS Church, his nephew did not agree, and William Smith remained a high priest in the RLDS Church for the remainder of his life. Really? Today, the Community of Christ sometimes refers to Smith as petitioner for RLDS Patriarchate, from April 6, 1872 until his death. Okay. Petitioner for doesn't mean that he was. I really admire Joseph Smith III for saying absolutely not. Yeah? You're not entitled to anything. Forget it. Yeah? Okay, lineal succession. The interrelationship of the offices of president of the church, known as prophet president, and presiding patriarch, also known as presiding evangelist, in the Smith family, and the doctrine of lineal succession and pre- and post-reorganization in the Community of Christ. And there's a list here of successors. So let's just take a quick look. So Joseph Smith Sr. married Lucy Mack Smith, yeah? And he is presiding patriarch, of the other not split off church in 1833 to 1840. And then he had, among others, he had the three sons, Hiram Smith, Joseph Smith Jr., and William B. Smith. And then Joseph Smith married Emma Hale, yeah? And you can see the dates of when they were presiding patriarch. And then Joseph Smith Jr. and Emma Hale had three sons, Joseph Smith III, Alexander Hale Smith, and David Hiram Smith. And Joseph Smith III married Bertha Madison, and they had two children, Frederick M. Smith and Israel A. Smith, and they were both president of the church at some point. And then Joseph Smith III also married Ada Clark, and they had W. Wallace Smith. There's no picture, I don't know why. And he also became president of the church. Okay. And then Joseph Smith's other sons, Alexander Hale Smith and David Hiram Smith, each had children. Alexander Hale Smith had a son, Frederick A. Smith, who was presiding patriarch from 1913 to 1938. And then David Hiram Smith had a son, Albert A. Smith, who was also presiding patriarch from 1938 to 1958. Okay, so the prophet president then were direct descendants of Joseph Smith III, while the presiding patriarchs were descendants from Joseph Smith's other children. Yes? Okay. I'm pretty sure that's right. I am not involved in that church at all, and so I don't want to speak for them, so I will just say, as a sign of respect, this is really interesting, and I hope that this is correct. But I'm assuming that it is. Yeah. If anybody knows more about this, feel free to correct or add anything in the comments, because this is something I don't know much about. So feel free. All right, politics. Smith served a term in the Illinois General Assembly in 1842 and 43, being elected to the Illinois House of Representatives as a representative of Hancock County. Smith ran in the elections as a Democrat. His chief opponent was Thomas C. Sharp. Was that or was that not the guy who wrote the other newspaper? Yeah. An anti-Mormon Whig candidate. Smith won the election easily as a result of overwhelming Mormon support from voters in Nauvoo. Huh. Death. When Smith died at Osterdock, Clayton County, Iowa on November 13, 1893, he was the last brother of Joseph Smith to die. He was survived by his sisters Sophronia and Catherine. Okay. Cool. I wanted to see if they mentioned his middle initial. There's a whole bunch of books about him, it looks like. No, it doesn't really look like it. There's a couple of books about him. There's Irene M. Bates, William Smith, 1811 to 1893, Problem Patriarch, which was published in Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought. And there's another article by Paul M. Edwards, William P. Smith, The Persistent Pretender, also published in the Dialogue of Mormon Thought. One in 1983 and the other in 1985. So if you're interested, go ahead and take a look at those. So that's interesting to me, and I find his ties to the Community of Christ quite interesting as well, because not very many major leaders of the church did have ties to them. So I find it interesting how that played out. But yeah, kudos to Joseph Smith III for standing his ground. I don't really know much about him as a person. And I think it is safe to say that William Smith was not a good person. I can't see anywhere that mentions his actual middle name, if he had one. So I'm wondering if it's a Lucas Johnson situation. I'm assuming that it is, and that his name was really William Smith, and that he didn't actually use a middle name. So, yeah. Interesting. I also like how the Community of Christ dealt with the situation, where he stood up and was like, I have a right to this office, and the Community of Christ was like, yeah, no you don't. We can list you as a petitioner for the Patriarchate, but we're not going to actually call you. And so yeah, major kudos there. I feel like a lot of people disliked him, but I also feel like the only reason he became so well known and so powerful in the church was because of his brother. Like, if Joseph Smith hadn't, put his arm around him, basically, and protected him, then he wouldn't have gotten as far in the church as he did. It's really interesting to me. I wonder if he regretted that. But either way, I did find that quite fascinating, and I hope you learned something today. I sure did. I learned that this man is very, very gross in so many ways. If you did like the video, though, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.